Hi everyone, Season 1, Episode 1. And what better place to start than talking about an organisation and a project that I think really embodies the essence of what civil engineering is all about. My guest today is Tara Sandiford, friend and colleague who in 2025 had the amazing opportunity of going out to Rwanda to construct a 74-metre suspension bridge. This bridge provides a vital lifeline between two communities on either side of a deep gorge that in the wintertime becomes entirely impassable. We hear a little bit about the preparation that was needed for this project and about her experiences on site of actually constructing it. But I think for Tara this project was about a lot more than just the construction. It was an opportunity to meet the local community and see the amazing impact that a relatively simple civil engineering project can have. If you'd like to find out a little bit more about what Bridges to Prosperity do, I'd encourage you to go and have a look at their website, which I've linked in the show notes below. There's also a link there to the new Civil Engineer article about this particular project. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Hi Tara, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm really excited to hear about your experience with Bridges to Prosperity. But I wonder whether we start a little bit further back with what was the first thing that attracted you into civil engineering and what's your journey into that been like?
The first thing, when I was at school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career, but I think I enjoyed physics and maths and the logical sort of way of problem solving, and that's what attracted me into civil engineering and sort of the maths side of things. How there's most of the time there is an answer rather than sort of things being floaty. And then my pathway into it, I went straight to university after sixth form and did straight civil engineering. Did a master's at the University of Southampton, and I did an industrial placement year too in the middle of that, which I did at Tony G and Partners and was also sponsored by them. So did summer placements each summer for 6 weeks. So I got a good amount of industrial experience whilst at uni, and then as soon as I graduated, I started as a graduate.
So when you first knew that you were interested in, you talked all about maths and physics and problem solving, did you have anyone you knew who was involved with civil engineering, or is it something that you discovered through research, or how did that come about?
Yeah, no, I don't know anyone that's a civil engineer. A few of my family members are other types of engineers, like chemical and mechanical, but no, none civil. So I sort of just researched jobs that suited the subjects I liked, and then when I went to see universities, I looked at their facilities and what the sort of modules involved, and it sounded very interesting, so I just took a chance on it.
And has it turned out as you expected, or did you just not know what to expect?
I think it's as I expected. Yeah.
Excellent. So Bridges to Prosperity, what's this all about?
So Bridges to Prosperity it's a charity that I think they partner with governments to sort of enable countries, I think mostly in Africa, to build trail bridges to basically connect rural communities and try and lift them out of poverty. I think that's the long and short of it.
So, and how did you hear about it?
Through work, through Tony G, because every 2 years they send off 5 engineers with a contracting company, 5 engineers from there, to go out and take part in the projects. So it was through work that I found out about it.
Sounds like quite an intimidating thing to take on.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. You see videos of other people doing it, but you never really know what to expect when you do it. But I just knew I love traveling and experiencing different cultures and different places, and obviously helping other people with the skills that I have is an amazing thing to do. So I just sort of threw myself into it and thought, yeah, definitely something I wanted to try.
Yeah, an amazing way to immerse yourself in a different culture.
Yeah, definitely.
So can you tell us a bit more about the particular project that you were involved with?
Yeah, so the one we did was called Jurama Suspended Bridge. So it was a 74-meter suspended bridge. It was a footbridge, although I wouldn't be surprised if they took motorbikes over it. It was over a river. So in the wet season, the river gets quite high and dangerous to cross. So this bridge connected 2 communities, and I think there's schools on either side of the river. And so some people from one side might go to school on the other side, or hospitals and markets. So it basically connected the two. And when we were there, we heard there are stories of people losing like livestock and even family members in that river because it's not safe to cross in the wet season. So that bridge sort of helped that. I think it reaches 3,000 people.
Vital lifeline for the community.
Yeah, yeah.
So stepping back to before you went, what did you get given? What did you get told? What sort of preparation did you have to do?
The main preparation, I suppose, was fundraising because we had to obviously raise enough money to get ourselves there. So there was 10 of us and we were supposed to raise £15,000. So we did a few things like we did the Yorkshire Three Peaks, which was quite a challenge, but actually it was quite nice for like a bonding experience for all of us because we never met before. And then like a few bake sales. I did a long cycle ride. So things like that to raise money. And then we were given the construction drawings beforehand, I think, and the program, so we could sort of familiarize ourselves. But as someone who's office based and not spent a lot of time on site, that didn't mean a whole lot to me. Like I could understand the drawings, but I couldn't understand how we were going to build it. So that was a big like learning curve when we got there. But that was the main preparation, and then I guess just logistics of booking flights, like hotels and things like that.
So it sounds like the design was ready to go when you received it. So you didn't have to do anything to complete that. What about ordering materials or tools or those sorts of logistics of getting them there? Was that arranged for you, or did you have to think about that as well?
Tools, actually, we had to get ourselves and get those over. So put those literally in our suitcases. So we were given a list of things that were essential and things that would have been helpful to bring. So that was another thing. We played to our strengths a bit with that. So the guys from the contracting company, we sort of asked them to order those tools in, and then we sort of split it between our bags so that it wasn't so heavy.
What sort of tools did you have to bring?
Well, we only used hand tools really, so like torque wrenches and PPE as well. We had to bring our own PPE, so knee pads, high vis, hats, goggles.
Presumably there was very little, if anything, available when you got there. So if there was something you hadn't thought of, were you completely stuck, or could someone be dispatched to go and find something? I mean, I can't imagine there's an equivalent of Amazon Prime.
No, definitely not. So Bridges to Prosperity, so they obviously do the design of the bridge because it's, I don't want to say copy and paste, but like they do it a lot and so they know what's going to work. They provided some tools, but they were quite used. So some of them weren't very good. Like the torque wrenches would tell you the torque on them, they just didn't work. So I think if we hadn't brought any of our own tools, we would have struggled, but there was some there that we could have used. But also we brought them over there and then left them so that the locals could then have those tools and use them. So it was kind of good in that way too.
Oh, that sounds good. So they've then got the facility to be able to do the maintenance themselves, because if you've got the tools you needed to build it, they've at least got to start in doing repairs and bits and pieces like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we were building the bridge, there was 10 of us from the UK, and there was probably about 20 local farmers who were helping us build it. And the reason why they were helping us, obviously we needed more manpower, but when we leave, that means they know how it was constructed, so they know how to maintain it. And so they're sort of self-sufficient with the bridge now. And then obviously they've got the tools as well. So it's a really good system that they've got going.
And what about getting the materials to site? Did that all get organised for you? I can't imagine the logistics of that were particularly straightforward.
Yeah, that was organised for us. That was luckily there when we got there, but we could tell that had to be physically carried. To get to site, we had to walk 15 minutes on like sort of dirt paths, like down into the valley. So I imagine some stuff was brought in a car or a van, some of the sort of steelwork pieces, but a lot of the rocks that were used to fill in the abutments, they literally got them from the stream down below and they carried them up manually, like one by one. It's quite impressive how strong these guys are, considering how sort of small they are. So
could you talk a little bit about what your day on site looked like?
Yeah, so every day there was a little sort of a song and a dance and a stretch at the start. So everyone would be in a circle, and then they had their own song, which we would try and join in with. And then each day somebody else would take over a little warm up, a stretch and something, which was really fun. And then, yeah, mostly just like cracking on. We'd kind of, the day before, we would look at the program and see what task we should be doing the next day. And then when we got there in the morning, we'd sort of delegate tasks, say like, I don't know, 3 people on each thing. And then there'd always be a couple locals working with us because they knew what they were doing probably more than we did. And yeah, just cracking on for a few hours. I think we got to site like, I think about 8-ish in the morning, and then we'd have a lunch break for about 45 minutes, and then finished about 4-5, because then we had to walk back to the trucks, which was like a 15-minute walk, and then a 15-minute drive back to our accommodation. But yeah, pretty much just doing like physical labour all day.
Doesn't sound that different from a typical day on site in the UK, perhaps, so at least
No.
timings wise.
Yeah.
And what about the health and safety side of things? You mentioned PPE, and I imagine that you were under strict instructions to operate in a sort of with a safety culture that's familiar to ourselves. How did that translate to the locals, and were they on board with that, and did that work?
Yeah, so we each of us from the sort of corporate team had a role, and one of the roles was a safety sort of lead. So they were in charge of doing a little safety briefing at the start of each day as well. So, you know, if it had rained, be careful on the sort of muddy steps that need to be fixed, or there's going to be an exclusion zone under the bridge, so like stay out of that area. Yeah, sort of wearing PPE and things. We were definitely encouraged by members of B2P to wear PPE. So when we were putting the cables across, they made sure we had the right gloves, and we had harnesses when we were on the bridge and fixing things, and they were very like cautious, like don't step on things that aren't connected to the bridge because you might fall through. And the locals followed it too, like we're all wearing hard hats, glasses. So as for safety, I think it was pretty well done, but it was obviously a lot of, you know, be sensible. You know, some things you don't need to be told what to do. You just sort of do it.
I can imagine that it simplifies things a lot where you haven't got big machinery up on site. It's hand tools and manual labour, so it forces you to go more slowly, and those intrinsic risks that you'd often have just don't exist anymore.
Yeah, I guess the main ones were probably like tripping over things, because when we're moving things about the site, it's just things in the way. But yeah, when we're on the bridge, when we were like bolting on the deck boards, we sort of had to carry them along and then place them down and then bolt them up, and you didn't want to step on one that hadn't been bolted down yet. And obviously there was no fence on the side when we were doing that.
So program wise, you obviously had a design, you had a construction sequence, and you had an outline program of what you were supposed to do each day. Did that feel very achievable? Was it tight? Was there float in the system?
Yeah, I think, well, at the very start, I didn't know if it was achievable or not, because you don't really know how long things are going to take. You don't even know what certain tasks involve. But as we got further through, there'd be days where certain tasks overlapped into the next day when they weren't supposed to. But then there was a few days where they told us we could finish early, which meant, I guess, we were ahead of schedule. So it was achievable. Yeah, we were there for 2 weeks, but some work had been done before we got there. Some of the locals had done some of the abutments and like set out the bridge and put the cable sort of in place, not sort of tightened up, but they were in place. So yeah, it didn't feel like we were rushed and that we were stressed we weren't going to get it done. If anything, once we got near the end, we thought actually we're in a good position.
Yeah, I can imagine you only need one day of something's gone slightly wrong, and you'd have to go back and repeat it also.
Yeah.
You mentioned the setting out. Just occurred to me. I mean, we're so used to being able to turn up with a total station or some kind of GPS system for setting out. Did they have those kind of electronics over there? I mean, GPS still works, but you've got to get all the equipment to site. Do you know how they did the setting out, or was that somebody else's problem sorted before you got there?
So we did some setting out when we were trying to set the sag of the cables. I personally didn't do it, but there was a total station. I don't know how technologically advanced it was, but the guys from the Knights Brown, they managed to use it.
They made it work. So we've talked a little bit about how you went about constructing it. It sounded like the foundations were at least started when you arrived, and then you finished those off, and then you needed to run the cables across and then install all the hangers. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, pretty much. So the cables were sort of across, but they weren't tight enough. So we sort of did an almost tug of war of like a load of us pulling them across at one point, and then they sort of jacked them into place a bit. And
I
then
understand why you needed the warm up now.
yeah. And then we bent the rebar by hand using a scaffold pole and like a jack that they'd made, which was like a bit of timber with some nails in it in the right place. And then you put the rebar in it, a straight piece of rebar, put a piece of scaffold and like bend it round, which took a few tries to actually know how much effort to put in, because you either go too far or not far enough, and then making sure the bend was at the right point because each of them you want them to all be the same, obviously. So the locals made it look really easy, but we did get the hang of it eventually. Although when we were then putting those sort of hangers onto the cables, some of them you could tell they were bent like the wrong way, and you sort of send them back and say you need to redo this one. So yeah, bent those rebars, and then sort of fed them along the cables, like tying some rope to each one. So you sort of like put one on, tie some rope, put the next one on, push it along a bit, and then put the deck boards on, tighten those, which was quite tricky because there was obviously a hole that the bolts had to go through. So you sort of had to like jiggle it around a bit to make them actually fit. And then you had to put a nut on the bottom. So you had to sort of lie down and lean over and like torque wrench it up. And then we had like a bit of a competition.
Are you willing to admit how many of those you dropped?
A few, not too many. You're wearing like PPE gloves as well, so it's quite difficult to actually twist it on.
Feel what you're doing.
Yeah, but all the tools like the spanner and things they taped up like a carabiner, like a bit of rope and a carabiner. So those were always meant to be clipped to something, so you didn't drop those. But yeah, it was a bit fiddly to get all of the deck plates in, but it was good fun.
So what do you think? Yeah, sounds great fun, and real camaraderie amongst the team as well. I can see why you really enjoyed it so much. So what do you think was the most challenging part of the build?
For me, it was mixing concrete. So this was to fill in the abutments. They filled them mostly with rocks, but then on the top sort of put concrete onto the sort of like go through and the surface on the top. So there was only a few of us that really stepped up to the plate with that one. But it was like shoveling concrete in the heat of the sun, adding water and then just mixing it and like walking and shoveling it around for like a good couple of hours. I had to take a breather at one point, but that was definitely the most like physically demanding thing that we did. But it's so satisfying to do it, and also to help the locals who were working with us. Like, yeah, it was nice to get involved and do it with them.
I remember the first time I got involved doing a bit of concreting, and it was went to pick up a shovel full of it. Realised that wasn't going to happen. Took half of it off the shovel and tried again, and realised that still was going to be a bit optimistic.
It's really difficult.
Yeah, it's heavier than it looks, isn't it? Which makes you realise when we're sat in a design office what it is that we're specifying.
Yeah, and the shovels we had were not the best, so that made it a bit more hard as well. But yeah, the locals made it look so easy, and yeah, it wasn't easy at all.
Yeah, excellent. And then did you do any testing on the materials afterwards to prove strength, or was that down to experience and knowing what looks right?
I don't remember doing any tests on the concrete. I think it was probably down to experience.
It sounds like it was probably finishing the surface and making sure that all of the counterweights in there is all bound in, as opposed to actually doing anything too structural.
Yeah.
What about the language barrier? I presume there must have been some pretty big challenges there.
Yeah, that was one thing I was going to mention. That we tried to learn some basic phrases, sort of like hello, thank you, and some sort of tools and things. But yeah, like obviously they didn't speak English. The representatives from the charity did, so they could sort of be a bit of a translator when we needed. But yeah, it was difficult to communicate. You sort of had to just use your hands and think. And sometimes we'd use Google Translate, and I think it didn't quite translate properly. But yeah, that was definitely a challenge. And I think maybe in hindsight, I would have spent more time trying to learn more of the language so that you could speak to them a bit more. But I do think we integrated quite well, regardless. Yeah,
I imagine some of the challenges is the random technical terms that we just use without thinking about it, and the translators going, "Hang on a minute, what's that?"
Yeah, yeah.
So, what do you think was your highlight of the whole scheme?
I think it was more like the people. So on one of the days we did a school visit, like a local school, and we came in and they were all singing to us and they were so excited that we were there, and we got to play games with them in their sort of schoolyard, and they gave us like drawings. And like every day after sight, there'd be kids waiting for us to finish. And then as we're walking back up to our trucks, they'd walk with us. And they actually did speak somewhat reasonable English. So you could sort of, they told us what their favorite subject at school was, and like, you know, asked what our names were and things like that. And we saw the same children each day. And then at the inauguration, they showed up as well, and they'd sort of like hold your hand and things like that, and they'd want to touch your hair. So that was like probably one of the highlights, just sort of forming these sort of bonds with the local people there.
And I guess the feeling of being able to you're using your profession, your experience to provide something for a community that sounds like they're just incredibly, genuinely very grateful for you to help construct it, and super excited for you to be there and share it with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everyone was so grateful. And in the inauguration, we had like a party, and everyone sort of dancing across the bridge, and like kids running across it. And even some of the teenagers were asking to have photos with us and things. But
Oh, amazing.
yeah, yeah, it felt really weird, like we were some kind of celebrities. But yeah, you could tell everyone was very grateful because, yeah, like I said at the start, there were stories that some of them told us that, like, one man I think lost his brother in the river. So it definitely was a very meaningful project.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Um, would you go and do it again if you were given the opportunity? I think I know what the answer to this question is going to be.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, yes, I would. I think you can never recreate the same experience twice, but I would definitely want to do it again because it was incredible. Like the people from the UK that we went with, we got on really well, and just doing something so useful for some other people that really don't have very much, and they're such genuine people and they're so happy. It's so nice to be around people that are so happy, but they don't actually have that much, and it really puts everything into perspective.
So, if you were going to do it again, what would you do differently next time?
Like I say, might maybe try and learn a bit more of the language. Maybe get more involved in the planning of what tasks going to happen on site each day. So get more of a construction lead role. So I was more of logistics beforehand, like booking flights and things like that. But now that I feel like a bit more confident with the tasks that might be involved, I could be a bit more helpful in that. But I feel like genuinely I got pretty stuck in with each of the tasks we were doing, but I just had to be told what to do.
Yeah. And so, what do you think you've taken away from it, coming back to your day job, and to you obviously working as a consulting engineer and primarily involved in design work? What do you think you've taken away from that experience that you use day to day?
It's difficult because it's quite different to anything you do day to day. And for me, having not really been on site, like worked on site really, it's helped me to understand a bit of scale, just as any sort of site placement would.
One of the things that I've taken away from time on site is those little practical things, like you mentioned, the weight and the effort involved in shoveling concrete around.
Yeah.
Just gives you a sense of what these materials are like and how they behave. And I wonder whether that's stuck with you when you're sat there specifying a slab thickness or the amount of rebar that goes in something, and you think, I know how much that weighs to have to carry that
Yeah.
around, and how do you going to install that, and you have a feel for what might be stable and what's not.
Yeah, that is true. And not only just the weight, but some things aren't that heavy, but they're just difficult to carry, or like carry it over a certain distance or carry it up some stairs. So yeah, that has
Yeah.
definitely stuck with me.
What was the food like?
The food was really good. We had two chefs that cooked for us at our accommodation every night, and it was a lot of like stews and things like that, but so delicious. And then we had goat as well. We had like a community barbecue on the last day, I think, and they cooked us some goat, which I'm not big on red meat generally, so I wasn't 100% sure, but other people did like it. But yeah, like
Yeah.
that was like, couldn't fault it. Accommodation as well, that was it was very basic, like the most basic accommodation I've ever stayed in, but you get used to it quite quickly. Like no running hot water. So we had bucket showers, and then the beds were literally wooden pallet with foam on top, but actually comfortable enough. I guess you're so tired after the days on site that you just sleep anyway. But
Yeah,
that
I
was
can
all part
imagine.
of the experience as well, which I loved. And there was like no signal either. So on our phones, so in the evenings, everyone talked to each other. They weren't like on their phones, so that was really nice as well.
So you said there's no running hot water, but you had cold water. Was that running water, or did you have to go and fetch it from somewhere? Or
There was running cold water, but you couldn't drink it, and we didn't really brush our teeth with it either. You know, like we could refill our water bottles, and then if we wanted a warm shower, they would boil some water, put it in a big jug, and then you'd mix the boiling water with some cold water and tip it over your head, basically. Um, but yeah, it's surprising how quickly you get used to that kind of thing.
what about a power supply? Did you have any
Um,
any power
we
supply
did.
there?
I think we had one socket in our room, which was fine. But this signal, there wasn't really any like data available, but that was actually really nice to be honest.
Yeah, joins people together when they've got no other distractions.
Yeah, yeah.
What was the weather like? You mentioned it was really hot during the day. Is that hot overnight as well, or is it one of these places that gets absolutely freezing?
No, it was quite warm. On our first week, it was like pretty much sunny all day, and then it cooled off. It sunset fairly early, and it gets dark really quickly. But it wasn't cold in the evenings. You didn't really need to like be wearing a jumper. But on our second week, it started to rain at about like 4 o'clock each day, which worked well because we were ahead of schedule. So when it started to rain, they said you can go home. Because also when it did rain, it rained. So the path that we usually drove. So we drove 15 minutes from our accommodation and then we walked 15 minutes. But that path that we drove just got so slippery. We'd be in the cars and they'd be sliding around and you're on like the edge of like a cliff face. So some of the times when it rained, we got out of the cars and we walked, but we were watching the drivers and like it looked quite hairy for them to
Yeah, I
have to
can
get the
imagine.
cars back down. But yeah, and that wasn't even the wet season, so I can't imagine what those roads get like when it's actually wet season and it's raining all day. So yeah,
Yeah, and puts it into perspective why they need a bridge to get across that river.
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thanks for inviting me on.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode.